So that's my story. And this has to take the place of the stories that have driven us in the past. The millennial story of the Christian tradition, the story of progress, the story of the manifest destiny. I mean, there's lots of stories out there, but we need a new story that fits this way of understanding the earth. Bioregionalism I hold up because we have to understand how the earth works. I mean, this is our doing dimension. And a bioregion is a naturally occurring geographic division of the earth that contains an interacting community of life, functioning as a relatively self-supporting system within the ever-renewing processes of nature. That's how the earth works. We have these communities of life, interacting communities of life, functioning as a relatively self-supporting system. So, I mean, the bioregion of the desert is very different than the bioregion of the Piedmont. The bioregion of the Arctic is very different than here. The bioregion of Asia is very different than here. But in order to keep the Earth functioning as it's functioned, then we have to understand our bioregion. So, for example, Dave and Joanna are involved in the Piedmont Bioregional Institute, so we need to learn our bioregions, and that's a very important part of an ecozoic society. Ecological spirituality, I won't read this, it's too long, but it has to do with what we've been talking about all through here, the sense of the sacred. I mean, I just loved Andy's speech. I mean, I hadn't heard him give that before. I was quite courageous, I thought. But you can see what's at stake in this. It's not just a matter of adding another moral dimension that we have to take care of. The environment. Well, of course, the environment is always whose environment? Well, it's a human environment, right? No, it's not yet. It's a whole different sense of the sacred. And it also has to do, I just slipped this in, is that in the modern period we have this idea that the only way we know the world is through the senses. But that's not true. There's our bodily awareness. There's our imaginative awareness. It's much, much deeper than that. I mean, I know things about Tim. It's not because I'm looking at him, seeing what kind of shirt he's wearing. I just know some things about Tim. And so this spirituality that ties us into the spontaneity, what Thomas is saying is that that if we want to get to the source of creativity, we have to get back in touch with the spontaneities of the universe. That we don't get back, and that involves art and literature and nature walks, all of these things. That we're lost if we're not. I mean, the spontaneities that come out of. I mean, it just kills me when we have these skaters on ice, and all they're talking about is the moves they're making and whether they're making a mistake or not. I mean, it's an artistic production. It's an artistic production. We do not know how to see. We do not know how to experience what's really going on in life, what's really going on. I'm going to give you the four E's. Eco comes from the Greek word oikos, meaning house, or kind of the whole earth. So ecology would be the knowledge or the logic of the house, or I like to say it has to do with knowledge of how to live together on earth. Ecology has to do with knowledge of how to live together on earth. Economics, well, we have this thing. Did you know, it always strikes me that the same year that we had the Declaration of Independence was the year that Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, 1776. So it's coincident with the nation state and the modern economic system, but it's a fallacy. It's not real economics. And economics should be establishing the norms, the rules for how we live and exchange goods and services in a way that's coherent with the functioning of the world. That should have to do with the norms or rules of the house. And ecumenics has to do with the people. We have to learn new ways of getting on with each other, of living, recognizing our diversity, but also our relatedness. There's so much to be said there. And then the ecozoic has to do with the life of the house. I don't know if this will speak to you, but it seems to me we look out into the universe and maybe there is more life, but so far as we know, this is the treasure of the Earth community. Someone said if you take the band of life on Earth, and it was like a globe, it'd be no wider than the lacquer on the globe. You know, the life sphere is just that small, the life sphere. And so we have to treasure this life of the house. This is what the ecozoic is about, that we might have life and have it more abundantly. Okay, I just want to say very briefly about our center, and I'll mention a couple of the other ones. You know, this is where Thomas was from. I mean, this message that we're giving this weekend is different, right? I mean, this should be a hotbed of this. I mean, our diagram here, we have the wisdoms. Four of these wisdoms, Thomas identified the wisdom of women, and there's a wonderful publication that Joanna helped put together on that. The wisdom of indigenous people, we need to relearn that. The wisdom of science, not the manipulative science, but how science helps us to know. I mean, it is important. And then the wisdom, recovering the wisdom of our religious and humanistic traditions. And we're grounded in the work of Thomas. That's the truth. So at any rate, there are several groups here that are carrying on that work. And no one can do everything. No one can't be a part of every group. So Tim and Megan have Echo, Pickard's Mountain Echo Community. They have wonderful programs for children. You know, Carolyn has the Center for Education and Imagination in the Natural World. Julie is doing the Dances of Universal Peace and studying Sufism. You know, I could just go on. The Piedmont Bioregional Institute that I mentioned, Albert was telling me about working on Awakening the Dreamer. There's many ways to carry this forward, but at any rate, I'd like to certainly offer the possibility of anyone who would like to work with us, that we're trying to develop these ideas and take them to the world. And I particularly want to mention artists and writers for the Ecozoic, or all. Because, you see, the ideas are one thing, but the way people will get it is through plays and literature and dances and choral music and liturgies for church. So we want our center to be one that can nurture that. And you mentioned this arc of history. You can read the footnote later, but we talk about Ecozoic initiatives, and I'm working now with a group in New York that is forming the Interfaith Consortium on Ecological Civilization. Couldn't think of a bigger thing to take on. So, I don't think we can sell the whole world immediately on Ecozoic, though we've made part of the key purposes of our group is to make the meaning of Ecozoic and the great work part of the global lexicon. But I think ecological civilization, knowledge of how we live together, knowledge of how we live with the earth are very important. At any rate, I've said enough, and thank you very much.